Good evening. It's Wednesday, and I'm Edie Nathan, psychotherapist, grief doula, and we're here tonight, just just meeting as we've been meeting for the last couple of weeks. And tonight, thought we'd talk about the inner critic. Uh, we all have this critic, right? That comes down on us and says, "Oh, you're not doing this right," or "You're doing too much of this," or "Why couldn't you have done that better?" And that inner critic can sometimes be so very, very, very loud. And I wonder if you had a room full of people, friends and family who loved you, what would they say to your inner critic? Especially now, in this time of hardship, in this time of isolation, what would they say to the part of you that's, criticizing, "Oh, I'm not doing this good enough. I'm afraid," or "Boy, I feel a little depressed," or "I feel a malaise," or "I'm actually liking this and I shouldn't like this," or "I'm eating too much," or "I hate myself," or "Man, I am going to be alone the rest of my life." And all these critical voices that come in that just summon the best parts of you and crush them. What if you were to actually imagine that you have your community around you, even though they're not really around you? Your community is around you, and they're saying to your inner critic, "It's time to leave. Leave her or him or them alone." What if you had a community of people who cheered for you, and you could actually hear those cheers in your heart? You could actually hear their love, and the power of their love, the power of their friendship, the power of their belief in you could actually help the inner critic to quiet. The thing is that you have to buy in. And so the community can be around you, and they can be applauding you, and they can say, "Come on, you've got this." But if you like your inner critic, and you've needed your inner critic to move you, to get you to do things that you don't normally do, then maybe it's about finding the balance between the critic that you need and the critic that you don't need. And being able to make the critic you need into less of a critic and more of an honest interpreter of what you need more of, rather than a critic. Spending so much time alone, it's really easy for the critic to become alive. And it's really, really easy not to hear the cheerleaders, not to feel the community behind you. Because sometimes where we have our communities, sometimes they're at work. They're not at home. Maybe because you live alone. But today is an opportunity to gather and harvest your community. The community of people who have supported you, who have been cheerleaders, who have said, "You've got this." And maybe the community is a community of one, and that's okay. And maybe that community is a community of old college friends or high school friends, or maybe it's a sibling. And if you join them, if you join them and you quiet the critic that takes you down a very slippery slope, The opportunities are endless. And maybe the way that these twists and turns in our life right now and in all of our lives won't bring on that inner critic and won't give voice to that inner critic, but instead will allow you to reframe and say, I don't have time for this inner critic. I do have time for a teacher. I do have time to learn. I do have time to figure out ways to better myself or to bolster myself or to feel good about me. Yeah. And when those voices want to creep in, I say, nope, I got my community. And then you reach out, you don't do it alone, and you call that brother or you call that friend or you call upon your community of cheerleaders and you do a reality check. Because if you're here and you're listening to this, you deserve to be good to you and to diminish the power of that inner critic. Because what that inner critic does is it stops other people and the voices of others who do criticize to come through, because if you get to it first, it kind of puts them off. But maybe you need to know who the criticizers are. And maybe you learn how to do that by first shutting down and quieting your own inner critic. So today, you've got this. And there's no room for the inner critic. There's room for a teacher. There's room for someone to give you an opportunity to be different. That's okay. To explore or be an explorer, that's okay too. To find different ways that you get your oxygen, that you get your energy instead of from the inner critic. Because some people feed off of feeling bad. And yeah, are we in a tough situation? Sure we are. But instead of adhering to the inner critic, let's do this one differently. Identify the inner critic. See what part of the inner critic could actually not be a critic, but be a teacher. And the rest of your inner critic, get your community in, even if it's a community of one. Sounds like a little bit like an oxymoron, but that's okay. And be good to you and harness that good energy and self-correct. And you can do that. You've got this. You've had the power all along. Contact 3 people and let them know what part of your teacher you're going to invite in. Give them one thing that happened to you today that opened you up, that opened your heart. And share with them something that just maybe didn't sit well with you, or maybe what was hard about the day. These are vulnerable times, and guess what? We get to be in touch with our vulnerability, our inner critic, and our teachers. Have a good night. See you tomorrow at 6 again.